Hi, I'm back again with another video, and I figured the next video would have less crazy stuff in it. I've already talked about how insane the press has been in terms of misinformation, in terms of omissions, in terms of careful wording to make Israel seem like the aggressor, even when they're not. I've already talked about all of that stuff. I've already talked about the NGOs, the ones that we are supposed to exalt, that turn out that they're corrupt refuse piles. But there's more. There's new information that's even crazier. There was a hearing because the universities have become cesspools themselves with Harvard, UPenn, and MIT. Three really quality, let's put it in quotes, quality institutions that just had no problem with people marching around with masks on, yelling genocidal slogans, telling everybody that they wanted to kill the Jews, that they wanted to, in some cases, push them into the sea, in some cases, gas them, in some cases, Antifada, in some cases, repeat October 7th. Sometimes they used veiled language. Sometimes they didn't even use veiled language. The universities themselves did nothing. They did nothing to stop the onslaught of Jew hatred. There were instances on campus where people literally surrounded Jewish students and wouldn't let them leave, or physically assaulted them, like when one was hit with a flagpole over the head, or any number of other stories that are crazier and crazier than the last, and absolutely evoke Germany in about 1938-39, when all of this was going on and everyone thought, no big deal. The Jews, unfortunately, because we're such gentle, trusting souls, thought it's not going to get worse than this. We'll get into this ghetto, and this will be the end of the line. And then, of course, it didn't end there. And all the other people who weren't Jewish kept thinking, first of all, it's not me. So okay, we'll let that happen. It's not so bad. It'll end there. Those people will oh, they're not allowed in that shop? Okay, they can't own a business? Oh, we took that away from them? Oh, their buildings, oh, their homes are gone? Oh, they're on a train? They're on a train. They're all on trains? Okay, I guess it got there eventually. So we're already in that process, already in that cycle. And right now, we watched the answers of these three presidents of their respective Ivy League universities that decided to tell us. And I'm not exaggerating. Sometimes people say to me, okay, you're exaggerating for effect, or you're using a metaphor that is larger than life. No. I'll just go ahead and quote them. When asked, is calling for the genocide of Jews against the rules of your university? Is it bullying? Is it harassment? The presidents all said this. It depends on the context. Calling for the genocide of Jews depends on the context, if it's bullying or harassment or against the rules. In other words, here I will paraphrase. When they say that it depends on the context, what they're saying is, sometimes it's okay to call for the genocide of Jews. Sometimes it's okay to say from the river to the sea, or Antifada, or praise to our martyrs, or gas the Jews. Oops, that one's kind of, you kind of said the quiet part out loud there, or any number of other things. It's okay to march with masks on so nobody can identify who you are, blame Israel for October 7th, and occasionally have a swastika in the mix. It's okay because it depends on context. That's what they're saying. Again, Harvard, UPenn, and MIT, three places that, again, were supposed to be respected, kind of like the UN, kind of like Amnesty International, kind of like Human Rights Watch. This is a world where you're not only allowed to march in the street for Jew hatred, you're now allowed to do it on campus. You're now allowed by the administration to do it in institutions of higher learning. A lot of people are calling for those presidents to resign. They've been losing donors like crazy. People have been taking their money and running. It's been leaking like a sieve, and I hope it continues to do so. But until those three presidents, those three molders of young minds are out of their positions, things are not going to get better. And not just them. They just happen to be the three that were there on the Hill. There are plenty of others who feel the same way, who think the same way, and have no problem because, it's the Jews. I wonder what their answer would have been if they had been asked, what if KKK, wearing hoods, just like these guys are wearing masks, were marching on college campus saying, lynch all the blacks? Lynch them all. We want to lynch them all. Also, we want to burn a cross and we want to hang people on it so they die. Lynch all the black people. Would that also be dependent on context? Somehow I have a feeling it wouldn't be. Somehow I have a feeling that would be something that would be a problem for these people and their ilk. And that's not the only thing that came out of this crazy week. In addition to that, we also have people finally speaking up for rape and sexual violence being not okay. I mean, I was almost under the impression that it was also dependent on context. I was told reliably by some of our most important institutions that it didn't happen in a vacuum, right? And so these things might be, what did they call it? Legitimate resistance, or as one brilliant Israeli comedy show called it, no. It's not rape, it's rapesistance. At a certain point, you have to start to question whether these people realize how obvious and bald-faced their Jew hatred is, or if they think they're still being really subtle and the subterfuge is working and we just haven't noticed because we're just that dumb. So this week, a couple of those lovely institutions decided to peek their head out of their gopher hole, look around and say, rape not okay, and then go back underground. For instance, the UN. The United Nations organization that brings us all together for the greater good, helps us all to make sure that, what was that? Oh, they ignored it for 7 weeks? Oh, my nobody off to the side here is telling me they ignored it for 7 weeks, and then released a statement that kind of both sides it. One of those, anti-Semitism is never okay, and Islamophobia, that sort of thing. We're worried about all the women and girls who were raped, and also anybody else who's been raped, that sort of thing. How about I read you directly from their statement? And you know what I mean when I say both sidesing it, little on the fencey, if you ask me. Quote, we reiterate that all women, Israeli women, Palestinian women, as all others, are entitled to a life lived in safety and free from violence. Also, all lives matter. Oh, wait, that's the thing we're not supposed to say. And yet somehow, every single time it has to do with Jews, we're okay saying all lives matter. Jewish lives, Israeli lives, Palestinian lives, Muslim lives. In fact, here, they even say one more. They go, all others. I mean, you guys got, raped so hard that some of you were literally torn in half like a wishbone. Some of you were raped so hard your pelvic bones broke. But, also everybody else who's ever experienced any sexual violence, anywhere. Thanks, UN. Great job. I'm also just here to remind you that the UN actually did put up a post, UN Women, still late, but they did put up a post. It said, and I quote, we condemn the brutal attacks by Hamas on October 7th and continue to call for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. Whoa, not bad, not bad. Oh, I see. The minute they got some comments underneath that post that said, oh, you're fascist or whatever bullshit the pro-Hamas contingent wrote underneath it, they immediately deleted the post and then put up one saying, give us back the hostages. Just forgot about the rest of the attack, forgot about October 7th, forgot about the rape, which wasn't even mentioned in that one. This has become known as Me Too, unless you're a Jew. Good stuff. UN, absolutely morally bankrupt as usual. And not to be outdone, another organization filled with glee and sunshine, Planned Parenthood, decided to wait until the UN mentioned something to make sure the world actually gave a shit about the Jews, and then they put up their own post. This was, I believe, yesterday. Planned Parenthood decided to finally weigh in on, war rape. Just so you don't feel too shocked by it, Planned Parenthood, who I will remind you, their motto is care no matter what. They forgot to write unless you're a Jew. But here was their statement. I want to go ahead and read the headline of their statement. This is on their website. This is not somebody else's headline that they've attached to it. This is their own headline. It says, Statement on Violence in Israel and Gaza. Once again, riding that beam, right? So let's see what they actually said. I won't read you the whole thing because it's a lot of bullshit, but I will read you the beginning and then I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. The beginning says, on October 7, Hamas unleashed a brutal attack in Israel, killing over 1,000 civilians, sexually assaulting women and girls, and kidnapping over 200 people, many of whom remain captive. Planned Parenthood unequivocally condemns, 2 months late, the atrocities committed by Hamas and rape as an act of war in any conflict. And it goes on from there to talk about how great they are, how their work is rooted in healthcare, and how it doesn't matter where in the world you are, we love everybody, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to jump ahead, not a lot, one paragraph. The war against Hamas in Gaza has now killed thousands of Palestinian civilians, including many women and children, and resulted in a humanitarian blah, 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 fuck you. So they couldn't even do this right. They couldn't even say 7 weeks after the fact, we're finally going to condemn the rape, sexual violence, kidnapping, and murder of babies, children, pregnant women, elderly, Holocaust survivors, and on and on. We're going to go ahead and do it 7 weeks late, but we're also going to, both sides of the issue, equivocate, moral equivalency this until it doesn't matter anymore. Even in their finally waking up to the problem that they never addressed, they still had to go ahead and pander. Just like the Biden administration, just like the UN. Is anybody just going to say, hey, Jew hatred, no good? Is anybody just going to say anti-Semitism, not a great thing? Is anybody going to say that murdering people simply because they are Israeli, or simply because they are Jewish, or simply because they happen to be in Israel, because some of those people weren't Jewish or Israeli that got kidnapped and murdered? Is anyone going to say that's not okay? Or do we have to every single time tolerate this talking out of both sides of your mouth shit? Because a friend of mine told me a very long time ago something that I think applies here, which is when you talk out of both sides of your mouth so much, it turns out you're just talking out of your ass. In the meantime, while we're being told that calling for the genocide of the Jews depends on context, and rape depends on context, and everything depends on context, in the meantime, we're hearing more and more about the atrocities that we didn't even know about on October 7 and after. So what we're hearing now is not only some of the brutality that was rained down upon the Israelis on that day, and specifically upon the female Israelis on that day. Some of it so brutal that I won't repeat it here, even though I think everybody should be aware of it. Everybody should be forced to watch the videos that they themselves proudly filmed, and they should have to watch it like when a dog shits on the carpet and you shove their nose into it, because these people who pretend it didn't happen, or pretend it wasn't as bad as it was, or pretend the Israelis did it to their own people, or that it's justified, or any number of other things, those people deserve to sit there like Clockwork Orange with their eyes pinned open, having to watch every moment of them beheading people with shovels and putting babies into ovens and cutting pregnant women's bellies open in order to pull the baby out, behead it, and making sure the mother watched. You see what I'm saying? You see how this isn't okay, and there's no context that could make it okay? You see how you denying that it happened is just Holocaust denial wearing a different skin? I can't tell you how many times I've seen on social media people saying, well, I haven't heard any of the actual testimony of the people who were sexually abused, and therefore it's not a believe all women situation. These are the people who don't realize that murdered, butchered people can't testify. It's the most disingenuous argument I've ever heard, and yet they do it with a straight face. Some of them legitimate, according to the press, legitimate, according to the people online, with a following. One who hasn't worked for Bernie Sanders for some time, but on her LinkedIn, oopsies, forgot to put when that employment ended. So at the top of her page, it still says, work for Bernie Sanders currently right now. She keeps trafficking in Holocaust denial, in massacre denial, in October 7th denial. And everyone seems to think, it's okay, it's no problem. It's not a big deal. And while all of that is happening, a debate rages. A debate about, is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? Okay, so let's talk about this for a second, because I keep hearing the stupidity of this argument. Anti-Zionism. Let's talk about it. What is a Zionist? A Zionist who believes that Israel has a right to exist. Okay, so an anti-Zionist is someone who doesn't like Israel and thinks it shouldn't exist. Basically, what you're saying is, I don't like you, I don't like your country, and I think your country should be destroyed. Now, of course, it's the Jewish state, and therefore what you're saying is, I want the Jews to be destroyed. And we know what you mean by it, because From the River to the Sea says it pretty blatantly. And those two things are almost always said together. But let's talk about Zionism. Zionism, once upon a time, was important. Before there was a state of Israel, it was important to be a Zionist and say, we need our land back, our ancestral home back. Don't forget, Israel is the greatest feat of decolonization in the history of mankind, no matter what anyone tells you. No matter how many times you read that tweet, no matter how many times you see someone giving you information while doing a TikTok dance, it doesn't change the facts. It doesn't change the facts that the people who claim that it's theirs now, the Palestinians, didn't come along for thousands of years after the Jews and the Israelis, even pre-being called Israelis, being called Canaanites, being called, when it was Judea and Samaria, Judea, Jew, it's right there in the fucking title. So post-World War II, when nobody decided to help us, when the ships were coming in filled with Jews and the UK or the US were like, hey, not here, and sending them back to be decimated in the showers and in the ovens, well, after a while we realized, oh, it's on us. It's on us to protect ourselves. We can no longer rely on anybody else, which is where the phrase never again comes from. It doesn't mean never again forget that it happened. It means never again forget all of it. Never again forget that they didn't help us. Never again forget that those people marched against us. Never again forget that people blamed us for things that had nothing to do with us. Never again forget that as we were the victims, we were victim shamed and made somehow in their narrative into the aggressor. Like that headline that said, Israel launches rockets into Gaza, but forgets that Gaza first broke the ceasefire by launching dozens of rockets, and then we retaliated because the war was back on, because they'd broken a ceasefire. But if you read that headline, it just sounds like Israel, asshole. And so it means remember all of it. And most importantly, remember that no one's going to be there to help us. So we got to help ourselves. And if other people step in, great. But we're not going to stop helping ourselves along the way, which is why we built the army that we built, which is why now there are holiday after holiday after holiday after holiday, and all of them have to do with people trying to kill us and us not being dead. And there's going to be another holiday after this is over too. Thanks for another opportunity for me to make gefilte fish. Going back to Zionism, it was really important post-World War II, with that never forget mentality, that we have a land of our own and that it be in our ancestral homeland, in the place where we first lived, in the place that we have occupied ever since, at least in some capacity, despite the Romans and the Arabs and the Crusades and everybody else trying to kick us out of our homeland. We finally got it back. And Zionism simply meant we wanted it back. We deserve to have it back. It is our homeland and we need it, because no one's going to help us but us. That's what a Zionist was. Back then, being a Zionist was important because there wasn't a state of Israel and we needed to establish one. And we were able to. And in 1948, we were granted statehood. But what's a Zionist now? Just that we're happy that decision got made? Yeah, that's all it means. So when you say you're anti-Zionist, what you're saying is, we're not happy that decision got made. We wish you'd never gotten your home back. We wish you didn't have a state of your own. But this excuse of, I hate the Jews and I'm an anti-Semite and I'm a Jew hater, but I'm going to say I'm an anti-Zionist, it's just semantic bullshit wordplay. Because it's like saying, I hate America, but I don't hate Americans. I'm anti-Tory. Remember the Whigs and the Tories? Like some people wanted to go back and be a part of England and some people wanted to create the Americas. Well, I'm anti-Tory. What the fuck does that mean? It means nothing, because America exists. So it's a moot point. It's a moot word. So by using it, all you're doing is using a dog whistle. I hate Jews. I'm an anti-Semite. Anti-Zionist? No. I mean none of those things. I just mean that Jews should all die and that we should take away their homeland and give it to the people who have been terroristically trying to murder them for hundreds of years. That's what I mean. I don't mean I have a problem with Jews. In fact, I love my anti-Zionist Jewish friends. I'm sure you've heard that. I've seen it plenty of times when I've accused people of anti-Semitism online, and they always tell me the same thing. No, 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 I've got Jewish friends who don't like Israel. We can use as an example JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace. I mentioned them in the last video, an organization that is about as Jewish as a ham sandwich covered in shrimp. This is an organization that was founded specifically to undermine Jews, to undermine Israel, and to undermine the state of Israel. These people do not represent the Jews, they do not represent Judaism, and they don't represent any aspect of the Jewish diaspora either. By last count, they are a sliver of a sliver of a sliver of a percentage, and yet people like racist, anti-Semite bigot Boots Riley, for instance, decides he's going to march alongside them. He's going to exalt them as the Jewish voices that he believes in. I mean, remembering that Boots Riley just discovered that he has a Jewish grandma that was a Holocaust survivor. And, well, he already hated the Jews, and now he has a good tool. I'm a Jew. I'm a descendant of a Holocaust survivor, so it's okay that I hate the Jews. It's okay that I'm anti-Zionist, just like JVP. JVP, who, by the way, for those of you who don't know, had an interesting thing happen a number of years ago where the guy who founded Social Justice for Palestine, this Arab Muslim professor who hates Israel and hates the Jews and hasn't hidden it at all, accidentally, when tweeting from his account, forgot to switch over to his Jewish Voice for Peace account before commenting, and then under his Muslim Arab name, tweeted at Jake Tapper, "As Jews, we are offended by what you've put into your broadcast." Other people in his organization didn't know he'd simply made a mistake, so they started tweeting the same thing from their Arab and Muslim names. And then he realized what he had done. He deleted all of it. All of them suddenly disappeared from online, and then Jewish Voice for Peace tweeted the same thing verbatim. Oops, let the mask slip a little. That was years ago. It's out there. You can look it up online. It's not something that they've hidden. And yet, the press doesn't talk about it. The press talks about Jewish Voice for Peace. As I mentioned last week, certain celebrities use them as their benchmark of what we should be doing in terms of a ceasefire, like that idiot Shailene Woodley. But the press doesn't mention, oh, it's actually not a real organization filled with Jews. They've got a couple of useful idiots that they're able to use, like the trans rabbi that shouted at Biden, but Jews don't agree with them. And yet somehow that part doesn't get mentioned. Weird. And that's something that the racists will point to when saying, well, these things are totally separate, anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. But there's a couple of things to remember. First of all, you're talking about a tiny, tiny, tiny sample size. It's about 95% of Jews are Zionists, okay, whatever the hell that means. We believe Israel has the right to exist. So let's say those 5% of anti-Zionists, or AKA self-hating Jews, or Jews that don't know their history, or Jews that don't understand how the world works, or Jews who are like capos in World War II who think, if I just scream about how the Jews are not okay and Israel's not okay, they won't come for me. You're wrong, by the way. All of those people still ended up in the camps after they helped the Nazis. It's important to remember that Zionist doesn't mean that you support every decision the Israeli government makes. In fact, Israel had more protests recently against the government within their own country and outside of their country because they didn't agree with what the government was doing. That's part of being in a democracy, as Israel is, despite what some of the press will tell you. In addition to that, it doesn't mean that you have to love Israel or feel it's essential or have gone there or feel like you need to move there at a certain point or anything like that. The idea of being Zionist simply means it's there in case we need it. It's an in case of emergency break glass situation of if the world ever rears its ugly head again and reminds us that we, the 0.2% of the world's population that are constantly and consistently hated, are going to be in trouble again. That's where we're going to need to go because that's the only place that's going to help us. So it's there in case. To be anti-Zionist doesn't simply mean I don't have a connection to Israel, or I grew up not talking about it, Or I grew up without religion, and so Israel was kind of this amorphous thing that I knew about, but didn't. That's not being an anti-Zionist. An anti-Zionist is saying Israel does not have a right to exist. The Jews do not have a right to their own place. So as an example, if we decided, you know what, the United Arab Emirates shouldn't exist, the Arabs shouldn't have their own place. Oh, wait, they have 22 countries, Arab countries in the world: Algeria, Bahrain, the Comoros Islands, Djibouti, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Morocco, and I could keep going, because there's 22 of them. Jews get one. And the anti-Zionists say, you don't even get one. Everybody else seems to have a place that is theirs. You don't get one. When polled, 97% of Jews say remembering the Holocaust. Very important. 94% of Jews say leading an ethical or a moral life is what's important, what makes me Jewish. Israel usually falls in the 80%, sometimes even less than that, when it comes to asking those people, is it an important part of you being a Jew? But that's not the question. The question isn't, does it matter to you? The question is, do you think it shouldn't exist? And that's why anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Because what you're saying essentially is, you Jews have no safe quarter. If something goes wrong, as it already has, we already have proof of concept. If it happens again, tough shit. That's what that is. And that is basically saying, because you have no place to go, as you didn't last time, and because no one's going to help you, as they didn't last time, this time we'll finish the job. That is Jew hatred, and that is anti-Semitism. And anyone who doesn't understand that either is a Jew hater, is an anti-Semite, doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, or is a liar who lies to themselves and to others. So with that in mind, with you understanding that anti-Zionism simply means Jew hatred, simply means anti-Semitism, they put it to a vote in the House. And guess what? It passed. So now, according to the law of the land, anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. Don't tell all the people marching. They don't know it yet. But here's the amazing part of that vote. Even though the resolution passed, it is the law of the land, not everybody voted for it. We have one anti-Semite racist out of Kentucky, Thomas Massie, on the Republican side, who not only voted against condemning anti-Semitism, but also decided to add a little spice to his meal by, just beforehand, posting a Drake meme that was totally anti-Semitic and was called out as such by Chuck Schumer. And then we also have 13 Democrats that voted against it, and worse yet, 92 Democrats just neutrally voting present, not supporting it, not against it, not for it. Hey, if someone comes from the Jews, I'm just Switzerland over here. 92 of us, which means 105 Democrats decided not to support the Jews when it came to this resolution. Thank God it passed anyway. By the way, as if you needed me to tell you, the entire squat, it's what I lovingly call the squad, because they're shit, all voted against this resolution. Here are the names of the 13 Democrats who decided Jews can go fuck themselves. Jamal Bowman of New York, Cori Bush of Missouri, Jerry Connolly of Virginia, Chuy Garcia of Illinois, Raul Grijalva of Arizona, Summer Lee of Pennsylvania, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, the dunce cap of American politics, Elon Omar of Minnesota, Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, Bonnie Watson-Coleman of New Jersey, Delia Ramirez of Illinois, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, obviously the greatest Jew hater in the entire equation, who is financed by terrorists. Good stuff, America. Good job, Michigan. And finally, Pramila Jayapal of Washington. Shocker. She's also the one who, when asked, should we condemn Hamas rapes, said, well, you know, we want it to be a balance. So we should condemn, but like, you know, not so harshly, because, you know, it's the two sides of an equation. Those guys, also known as the Nazi Brigade, as far as I'm concerned. I imagine these 13 hooking up with Thomas Massie in a basement and just playing with trains, just because. By the way, often when this is reported on, unless it's specifically by Jewish or pro-Israel organizations, they forget to mention that a bunch of people voted against it. They certainly forget to mention that it was the Squad, unless it's an organization that wants to highlight how wonderful those people are for hating the Jews. And so what happens? The press just says, hey, it passed, okay? America, yeah, good job, everybody. We passed this anti-Semitism bill. We're all really proud of ourselves. And just like they leave that out, they leave a bunch of other stuff out. Right now, the mainstream media is really doing their damnedest to try to let you know Muslims are awesome. Muslims are not the problem. Jews are the problem. So instead, they decide to just not report on certain stories that I think would hurt the cause they're trying to push. So they have a narrative that they are trying to get across, they're trying to indoctrinate the world with. And every time the Muslims do another terrorist attack, right now, guys, can you hold it a minute? We're trying to prove to everybody that you're awesome. San Diego State is going to host a seminar where the criminal terrorists that were let out in a hostage swap are going to get interviewed for part of their Middle East summit. I mean, this is not a problem because these are the good guys. They keep telling us, the good guys, the good guys. What are the stories that we're not seeing? Maybe you heard about the Hamas-inspired attack at the Eiffel Tower, where a guy with a knife and a hammer killed one person and injured two, stabbed one person, I should say, and bludgeoned two. That was a Muslim terrorist attack. What else? How about the Catholic Mass in the southern Philippines? Muslim terrorist attack that took the lives of 4 people. Did you hear about that one? Did you hear about the roadside attack in Iraq in which ISIS killed 11 people? Did you hear about the attack that was foiled, but almost in Las Vegas? Yeah, in your own backyard. Also, ISIS claimed an Hamas-inspired Muslim terrorist attack. Did you hear about that one? I think that one didn't make it to the front pages. And when it did get reported, like for instance by CNN, they made sure to go ahead and in the headline put a lone wolf. That way, there's no allegiance to anybody. It's just a dude, just a crazy guy. Don't worry about it. The fact that he swore his allegiance to Hamas and ISIS, that he made sure that he was doing this on behalf of a specific ideology and a specific organization. No. He's a lone wolf. CNN told me so. So don't worry that Muslims are still the heroes of this story. Did you hear about Hamas, ISIS killing 30 people in Syria? It sounds terrible to me because we're still talking about an ideology, but I guess if you ask Whoopi Goldberg, it's just brown on brown violence, right? Did you hear about the Hamas ISIS brigade in Uganda killing dozens of people in a school? I could keep going, by the way. There's a bunch I'm not even mentioning. There are so many because time and time and time again, this is what happens. Sometimes you'll report on it, but not when you're in the middle of a cycle in which you're trying to make them out to be the underdog, the victim. How are you supposed to report that they keep killing people in the name of Hamas, ISIS, Allah, and whatever else you want to ascribe to it? How are you going to thread that needle? They're the good guy. They're the victim. It's all just justified resistance. Right now, they attack the Jews, and because you hate the Jews so much, you're cool with it. You're going to turn a blind eye to it, just like the presidents of the universities do, just like the United Nations does, just like all of them do. How is that narrative going to work when it's non-stop violence, non-stop terrorist attacks coming from these people against others that aren't Jewish? Uh-oh. What happens now? Well, you figured it out. Just don't report on that stuff, and then no problem. I knew you could do it, mainstream media. Good job. And you, CNN, you get a gold star for reporting on it, but lying about what's happening in the headlines and in the news stories to make it seem like the people we're still exalting, they're still okay. This was a lone wolf. What a weird dude. Anyway, back to the good guys who have nothing to do with that guy. It's one way to get the story across. The problem is that little by little, the truth always comes out. It's happening sooner than I expected. The fact that all of these people are testifying about the sexual violence, The fact that people are actually getting called on the carpet to talk about the anti-Semitism rise. Like or hate Elon Musk, he screwed up when he posted that tweet. And he had to make amends, and he did it. He went to Israel, he watched a video, and whether it was performative or not, he came out saying, now that I know the truth, here is what I think. And he changed his mind. How are we going to incentivize others to watch the footage? How are we going to incentivize others to learn more, to learn the context, to understand how bad these bad guys are? Or the history of the region and how Israel is actually the most humane fighting force, not only in modern warfare, but in the history of combat. How are we going to expect people to learn all of that and then change their minds if we don't give them the grace to do so? Those of you still condemning Elon Musk, post his trip to Israel, post him now commenting on what's going on at Harvard, at Penn, at MIT, commenting on how From the River to the Sea shouldn't be on social media, how Intifada shouldn't be on social media. Those of you not giving him grace now are just holding on to something because of your performative politics and not because you actually care about the Jews. We have to give people the room to understand, learn, grow, and change. And when we see them do that, we have to believe them, just like when the Muslim terrorists tell us over and over again, I am a Palestinian terrorist and I hate you for your freedom. I hate you because you're Jewish. I hate you because you're American, and I want to murder all of you. We have to believe them too. I'm decided I'm going to do a bunch of these videos. People have been writing to me about the first one and how they learned a lot of new information that they weren't seeing elsewhere. And if only one person learns only one thing, then the whole thing was worthwhile. I am speaking off the cuff. This is not coming from a script, but it is coming from my rage. It is coming from my righteous anger at what is going on in the world today. I'm doing a lot of things on a lot of fronts to try and change the narrative, talking to you, giving you information you may not have heard before. This is unbelievably important. I had a conversation with someone who I've known for over 12 years. She is a very intelligent, very educated, very successful executive. In the conversation that I had with her, she made one thing very clear. Even if I present her with facts, even if I present her with proof, she's not going to change her mind. She was a Black Lives Matter activist. She is firmly, as she put it, anti-Zionist, anti-religion, anti, and all of it amounts to anti-Semitic. Now, she made a point of saying, just because I believe all this doesn't mean I'm anti-Semitic, which is kind of like whenever someone says, I'm not a racist, but, and then you know that the next thing out of their mouth is going to be super racist. She is someone who should know better, and she doesn't. Now, in her case, she may be too far gone. She may be past the point of learning because she's past the point of listening, but maybe she's not. And a lot of you may be in a camp right now that you shouldn't be in because you've been fed a lot of misinformation. I scroll through social media on a regular basis. I am on groups talking about this all over the world, and I keep hearing the craziest stuff, the most disingenuous arguments, absolute false information, fiction that is being presented as fact. And if I was fed all of that, stuffed full of it like a Christmas goose, and I didn't know that what I was swallowing was lie after lie after lie after lie, then I might be marching with you as well. So somebody has to stand up and say, this is wrong, that information is incorrect, that history is false, that photo is doctored, and on and on and on. If I can do that, then I've done something. And therefore, I will not shut up. I will not stop. Because if I can be the voice of even one person's information, then it's worthwhile. Not to get too cheesy, but Schindler said it really well. If I can save one life, then I can save the world entire. So here we go. This is the second video, more to come. And the next time I talk to you, I'm going to talk to you about the pervasive, invasive, and insidious rise of propaganda on the internet and in the media, and show you how they are using lies and language to make you believe things that are firmly not true. We're going to get into all of that next time. Thank you for listening. I'll speak to you again soon. Am Yisrael Chai.